Today I'm going to talk about navigating life's uncertainties. I toyed with giving this all the title, When You Think You Get It, but end up having to admit you don't. And we'll be looking at Mark's Gospel, chapter 9, verses 30 to 37. This scripture invites us to ask the following question that all of us face from time to time in life, and I think especially during these uncertain times. Here's the question: how do I best navigate life when the future looks uncertain? Whenever life is uncertain, we chafe against natural human desires that languish unfulfilled and engage in strategies to help us cope. For instance, we look for answers to explain what has gone wrong. Our natural human inclination is to find a target we can blame for our misfortune. Most times, though, we fail to come up with answers to our uncertainty, and we end up feeling frustrated. Or we struggle to regain the feeling that we are in control of our lives. It's very unsettling to not know if we are sinking or swimming, which is how we often feel when life takes an unexpected turn. Desperation drives us to look for areas of life over which we can gain control, giving us some sense that we are back in charge. And we seek guarantees that the future will bring us personal security. When something bad happens in society, changes are introduced which will offer a guarantee that the mishap won't be repeated. New highway signs get installed, better building codes are implemented, and health practices are improved. It's the same in our personal lives. We make changes that promise to better guarantee our personal security. But what if life becomes uncertain and none of our strategies for dealing with that uncertainty work? What if we discover no answers? We continue to feel no control over our lives, and we have no guarantees that our future will ever be secure. How do we live in response to ongoing uncertainty and disappointment? In the scripture we look at today, Jesus' 12 disciples found themselves in such a situation. They thought they had figured Jesus out, and it turned out they hadn't, which made their future very uncertain. Just like we would, they engaged strategies they thought would help them navigate that uncertainty. When we read Mark's account, we are tempted to think that Jesus' disciples were mentally slow, but we would do better to see ourselves in their reactions. Jesus' approach to life was, and continues to be, upside down from what we expect. But that doesn't mean we can't learn. As we encounter Jesus and his disciples in Mark chapter 9, it's helpful to remember that they were on an extended period of intensive teaching. Jesus had taken his disciples on a lengthy adventure outside of Jewish communities where he could spend uninterrupted time teaching the 12, and they were just now returning to more familiar settings. Previous to this extended time of teaching, the disciples had struggled to understand who exactly Jesus was. For instance, when Jesus spoke directly to the wind during a life-threatening storm and brought about an instant calm, they asked, "Who is this, that even the wind and the waves obey him?" But after the extended time of teaching, Peter was able to boldly declare that Jesus was the Messiah, recognizing that he was God incarnate. That's in the previous chapter to the one we look at now. The awareness of Jesus being the Messiah appears to have awakened a hunger for greatness within the disciples. It was no wonder. If Jesus was the great Messiah, they were the ones most likely to have that greatness rub off on them. As if to highlight the promise of coming greatness, Mark 9, this chapter that we're going to look at, or at least part of the part the earlier part of the chapter we're going to look at, begins with the account of the transfiguration of Jesus, where Moses and Elijah appeared together with Jesus, affirming his greatness. Moses and Elijah were long dead, but considered to be the greatest spiritual leaders of the past. And their appearance with Jesus was confirmation for the disciples of the future greatness to which they were about to be part. All would have been well in the disciples' minds except for something unsettling that Jesus was repeatedly bringing up. 3 times in each of the chapters 8, 9, and 10 of Mark's Gospel, Jesus announced that he was going to be killed, but would rise after 3 days. It would take until after Jesus' resurrection for the disciples to figure out what Jesus was talking about. But at the moment, it made them very uneasy. They thought they had figured out who Jesus was, and it turned out they hadn't. How were they going to navigate life when their future suddenly looked uncertain? That question provides a setting for Jesus' second announcement that he would be killed. And here's what happened according to Mark 9, verses 30 to 37. They left that place and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were because he was teaching his disciples. This is that time of intensive teaching that I mentioned earlier. Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise." But they did not understand what he meant and were afraid to ask him about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all." He took a little child whom he placed among them. Taking the child in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." Even though this was now the second time the 12 disciples had heard Jesus announce that he would be killed and rise after 3 days, they resisted doing the smart thing and asking Jesus for clarification. Instead, the disciples distracted themselves from this newly introduced uncertainty by arguing over who among them was most important. Going back to our instinctive responses when we face life's uncertainties, maybe they thought that being great and important would provide answers, that it would make them feel in control of their lives, and that it would offer security for the future. While their desire to be great might have made sense to the disciples, Jesus would have none of it. Looking for answers, being in control, and getting guarantees about their physical future wasn't the way Jesus intended them to navigate their uncertain future. Besides, they had already proven that they were incapable of always understanding Jesus' answers. Nor did Jesus have any intention of them feeling in control of their lives, nor was Jesus about to promise that their physical well-being was secure. The lesson that Jesus gave his disciples is one, though, that we are intended to learn as well. When we face uncertainty, no matter how great we might think we are, seeking answers, trying to be in control, and looking to guarantee our future security, it's not going to be our best strategy. This is important because all of us have either already been at a place where we faced uncertainty or we will be. And when that happens, we need to know a strategy that will help us navigate uncertainties. And so, consistent with his upside down approach to life, Jesus introduced service as a strategy for navigating uncertainty. How could that possibly help? Jesus told them that anyone who wants to be first needs to be last and be a servant. Then he called a child and placed the child before them. Literally, he had the child stand before them, which was significant because children had no social standing and were at the bottom of the social ladder. This was not meant to be one of those feel-good moments where Jesus was showing kindness to children. He was teaching the disciples that the essence of serving means placing oneself below the lowest person on the social ladder. You can imagine the impact of the moment. The disciples had just been arguing about who of them was the highest on the social ladder, and Jesus told them that the greatest person was the one who chose the bottom rung. Service, according to Jesus, apparently means getting beneath a struggling person to help lift them up. Why did Jesus focus on serving at that particular moment in time? I think Jesus was giving an answer to the question with which we began. How do I best navigate life when I don't like the look of the future? Jesus' answer to that question was that the best way to navigate uncertainty is through service. Service won't provide answers to uncertainty, but it will provide meaning within an uncertain situation. Think of the scenes of destruction you've seen, whether because of war or natural disaster. Who were the people that navigated the uncertainty of the destructive moment the best? They're typically the ones who focus their energies on other people. Time and again, we see that people who manage disaster the best are the ones who help one another. We were just reminded of that during the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We see it among hurricane victims, and we see it among people whom we know. Serving might not provide answers. It doesn't make us feel in control, and it doesn't give us guarantees about our future security, but it does bring meaning to life despite uncertainty. In fact, uncertainty is often the motivation that causes people to reach out to one another. During his human ministry, Jesus talked a lot about serving. A couple of chapters later in Mark, Jesus would say that he did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Serving for Jesus was more than just a nice thing to do. Serving was Jesus' strategy for navigating the uncertainties of life. Something very important happens when we engage in service. Serving minimizes our need to understand. Sometimes the why will take care of itself after we offer a helping hand. More importantly, serving connects us with God. God is one who serves, and we can't properly know God outside the context of serving. The lesson that Jesus wanted his disciples to learn is that Serving is more important than understanding. Whenever we find ourselves in a place where life feels uncertain, Jesus would want us to know that rather than looking for answers, our most successful strategy in navigating that uncertainty will be to look for a way to serve others.